Yes, what is up,
Yay!
everyone? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 207. Getting up there. Happy Monday, everybody. So thankful that you are taking some time out tonight to join us on tonight's episode. A lot of stuff happening today. It's a big Monday here at GRHQ. But I just want to get into the show. I just want to start this because our guest tonight is awesome. Kaci Lichte is back on the show joining us. She's going to talk about her injuries. So she suffered some pretty significant injuries last year after we had her on the show after UTMB and had to undergo months of recovery. We're going to talk to her what it was like to have to turn down races and stop racing and start from scratch. Literally start over from zero, training her body back up to the distance. This weekend, she ran the Freestate Marathon, and we're going to talk to her about what it was like to go through that entire transition back to racing. So Casey's joining us on the show tonight as well. We are doing a big giveaway tonight. Nice breathe in there, babe.
That's my only sound effect.
If that sets the stage for the drama, very excited because Quicksilver 100K, many of you, if you've subscribed to this channel, are familiar with this channel and the videos that we've cranked out over the last few years. A couple years back, I ran the Quicksilver 100K in Northern California. It is a brutal race, a beautiful, brutal race. It is also a Western States qualifier. They reached out to the Quicksilver Running Club and basically said, we want to give an entry away to the Quicksilver 100K, which is coming up next month. As well as a $500 travel stipend.
That's so cool.
It's so awesome. So not only do you get an entry into the race, but you also get some dollars to help you travel to the event next month. So we're going to tell you all about how you can enter that contest on tonight's show. So sit back. We got a good one tonight. Relax.
It's a good one.
It's a good one tonight. And enjoy Ginger Runner Live, episode number 207 with Kaci Lichte. Very excited. Here we go. Ginger Runner. Yay! What is up, everybody? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 207. We're getting up there in age and in show numbers. On tonight's show, we are joined by ultra running extraordinaire Kaci Lichte. We're going to talk to her all about a recent injury that she had to basically work her way from zero back to running. She suffered some fractures and stress fractures late last year, after a really big summer of racing and just crushing it, and had to take not only a break, but just like stop running altogether and heal her body. And we're going to talk to her on tonight's show all about what it was like to go from that elite level to not being able to run at all and having to rebuild her fitness up and basically work her way to what she just did this last weekend, the Freestate Marathon. We're going to talk to her all about what it was like to work through that and probably get some good tips and advice for those of you who maybe suffer from injury. I know I did last year, and I could probably have used some of the tips we're going to learn about tonight. In addition to talking to Kaci on tonight's show, we're going to be giving away, or at least telling you how to win a entry to the Quicksilver 100K, which is coming up next month. It's the last 100K that I ran a couple years ago. It was brutally hard, gorgeous race, and it has this hill in the middle called Dog Meat, if that's any indication as to the caliber of this race. I wrote a song about it that's in the movie that I made about it.
It's just as fun as the name of the hill sounds.
I love and hate this race, and we're going to be telling you all about how you can win a race entry to that race on tonight's show later in the episode, as well as how you can also win the $500 travel stipend for that Quicksilver race, but as well a Pacific Coast Trail Runs race entry for this fall and another $500 travel stipend. They're hooking us up, and we're giving this stuff away.
This is pretty awesome because there's always races that you want to go do, but maybe it's not in your budget. Like the race entry is not in your budget, the travel is not in your budget. So this is pretty awesome.
This is pretty awesome. So we'll tell you all about that later in the show. Before we get started, of course, we have some people to thank. Our Patreon supporters help this show happen week in, week out, week after week. So big shout out to all of you who are members of the Patreon community, the GR crew. Really happy to have you all on board. 3 individuals in particular at the top tier help us do Ginger Runner Live week after week. Chris Lee from Hong Kong. He and his team there at Trailblazer have an incredible community in Hong Kong, teaching and educating those around the Hong Kong area about the trails that are within 10 or 15 minutes of the city. They did a screening of Where Dreams Go to Die last month that raised over $10,000 for charity, which is just wonderful. So Chris and his team there at Trailblazer are doing some incredible things for the community. He's a longtime viewer, a longtime supporter, so thank you, Chris. Brian Sands, another longtime supporter, ran his first marathon last October and is currently training for his first 50K coming up in August. And I talked to him today. We get to chat every month one-on-one. And he's already talking like, what's after the 50K? I'm not going to say anything because Brian, obviously, I believe in him, but I don't want to just say it on air.
I love Brian's attitude.
He is
like,
so
awesome.
Positive. He's got an incredible story, an incredible journey, and is proving that, if you want to run an ultra, you can. If you want to run trails, you can. Doesn't matter if you've never done it before or if this is going to be your first race distance of whatever. Brian is testament that we can all do it, and he's an absolute champ. Excited to have him on board as well. Finally, Rick Bjarnason and his team at cheekymonkeymedia.ca, an incredible team up there in British Columbia who do all sorts of really amazing, beautiful websites. They're currently redoing the Ginger Runner website, and we're in not the final phase, but like in the middle phase of getting this thing done because the website currently is a little broke. So he and his team at Cheeky Monkey Media are redoing it. He himself is an ultra runner training for Sinister 7 and Fat Dog 120 this summer. Rad dude, and really excited to have him on board. Okay.
I also want to give a very quick shout out to all the Patreon crew people who went out and raced this weekend. You guys are all awesome. There's a lot of you guys that got out there this weekend and did some pretty cool stuff.
A lot of people running the first 50K this weekend, first blank distance, but we had a couple individual Patreon supporters. Liz, big congratulations to you.
Yes, first 50K for Liz.
And it's a really wonderful community. If you haven't joined it, consider it. It's as little as $1 a month, and just a testament to the community. Many hundreds of Patreon supporters ran miles for Stephanie this last weekend and the weekend before, who's a member of the community who unfortunately is having a really rough battle with cancer. And our thoughts, of course, are with Stephanie, her family, and her fiance. But the community itself is really rallying behind her and logging miles for her. It's a pretty wonderful thing. Let's start the show. Welcome everyone. Very excited about
Casey's being so patient.
She's being so patient. I realize that our show now, the intros are getting 3 minutes, 4 minutes long. But Kaci Lickteig, our guest tonight, is such a wonderful human being. It is so great to have her back on the show. She joined us just after UTMB last year with Magda and Amanda. That episode is wonderful. Go back and listen to it if you haven't. But I get to introduce the one and only Kaci Lickteig.
Yay!
How are you?
Hey. Great. How are you?
Good. I like the new shirt.
Yeah.
So first of all, we haven't talked since you signed. So congratulations. You are now an ultra elite athlete. Yes?
Yes. Thank you.
That's pretty awesome. How does it feel?
It's great. They're a great family. The community is just wonderful. Teammates. Very, very helpful. Very nice to reach out with.
Nice. So let's of course, Kim is in the chat room. I always forget this part. I don't forget you.
I'm sitting beside you.
No, I don't forget that. But Kim, can you just remind people what's going on in the chat room?
So we are live, as we mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have questions for our wonderful guest, Kaci, please ask them in the chat room. We'll be pulling questions throughout the hour. And I also want to give a shout out. We have Coach Coop in the chat room.
Coach
tonight.
Coop. Shout out to Coach Coop, who coaches Kaci. Yep. So big shout out to Jason Coop. We actually just saw at Lake Sonoma 50 as well.
I didn't. I wasn't running fast enough to see him.
All right, Kaci. So I can't. Well, I know how this is gonna go because I just know that the injury is not great, but I've been wanting to hear all about it. So let's talk a little bit about how this came to be. So we last talked to you on this show late summer, right after UTMB. The weeks following that race, how did things sort of play out?
After I got back from UTMB, I really did negligence on my recovery. I just started running again. I thought, I feel pretty good. The mountains didn't beat me up that much. So I started running, and then I had some like short races that are fast coming up, and so I was like forcing myself to get out every day to do something, even though like coach was like, no, rest is better. But I'm very stubborn, and so I kept going out and forcing runs, forcing like speed workouts to get these runs done. But my knees started getting really swollen, and I noticed that like they were not getting any better, and I was struggling like with how swollen they got. And at one point, I couldn't sit. I couldn't drive myself to work without like my knees just killing me. And they just got worse and worse and worse. And I just kept thinking, oh, I'm just gonna train through it. It's my knee. It's fine. They're both like it. It's I'm too stubborn to quit. So
right.
I was doing a workout, I remember, and I was running up one of our grass hills, and I just felt something kind of start the process. So I felt something like down in my groin area, and I was like, oh, that didn't feel right. And I was like, I instantly thought in the back of my head, stress fracture. I was like, oh my gosh, maybe a stress fracture. I was like, no, I've never had one. There's no way, and especially in the pelvis. That's really rare. So I continued to run, and my knees continued to get more swollen. They were to a point where they're like grapefruit size, like legit, like they were so bad.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, this is getting bad. So I had already signed up for some races. I had one on October 22nd. It's the Goats 50K that I do every year. I love that race. And I was like, I'm going to run this race, and then I'm going to take some downtime and, recover, because I wanted to do Bandera to see if I could get a golden ticket. Mm-hmm. So like, if I can do this race, do some downtime, and then train for Bandera. Well, I woke up that morning and my back was very tight. Like, I've never had a low back so tight in my life. And I got up and I was like, this does not feel right. And my knees were really bothering me still. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to pop 4 leave and say, let's go, And so I got there, tried to warm up a little bit. It was really cold, and I really just shuffled for like 2 minutes. And I was like, okay, good enough. And started the race. And I felt like my hip flexor was starting to get more sore every like loop. So there's 10-mile loops, and the first loop was okay. Second loop was getting worse. Third loop, I was like, every downhill I couldn't do. And I was like, I'm just going to push through it. It feels like a hip flexor. It's just going to get sore. Worst case scenario, it strains a little bit. I was literally half a mile to the finish, and I went to go around somebody in the single track, and I jumped left onto my left foot and felt this instantaneous pop. And I doubled over, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was, whatever that was, just really hurt. And I thought, oh my gosh, did I completely tear off my hip flexor? Because that's what it felt like. And I thought, oh man, well, half mile to the finish, you're going to finish. So I forced myself to finish running, crossed the line, and I stood there and I couldn't move. And that was the first time, like, I looked at Miguel. He was standing there, and he looked at me, and he's like, whoa, what is going on? And I'm like, oh man, my face was like in sheer pain, panic. And I seriously was just hobbling. And I went home that night. I was on, so I don't have crutches at home, and I really needed them, but I used my trekking poles to like kind of,
oh man,
because it was so painful. And I laid on the couch, and I was like, I can't move. I really cannot move. I have no idea what's going on. And my friend, she's a physical therapist, Christy, got me like hooked up with a orthopedic doctor right away. And within like a day or two, I went into them, and they did the MRI, and he's like, you have 2 stress fractures that are in your pelvic rami. And so there's one on the superior lateral and then one on the inferior. He's like, you cannot walk. You're not supposed to be walking now. You need to be on crutches. Well, my line of work, I cannot do that because I am up on my feet as a physical therapist, getting people out of, getting them out of bed, walking them. So I did not abide by those rules very well. Mm-hmm. At first, like, I did it when I was home, but at work I had to be on my feet. And everybody noticed. They're like, geez, you can't even walk. I'm like, I know, but I have to do my work. I can't take time off. But I went back and had another MRI a few weeks later because I was supposed to be 4 weeks of non-weight bearing. I went back, I think about, I don't remember if it was like 10 weeks, and my top fracture turned into an actual fracture. So I had a complete fracture and then the stress fracture. So that was like, it was just like nothing. I could not do anything. So 4 weeks of nothing but crutches. So a crutch here and there just to kind of give myself a peace of mind of like, I got to be active. I went from like training 100% to absolutely nothing.
Right.
And that is hard. It's like taking, like you stopping cold turkey. And it, at first I was like, I thought, oh, a week or two, I can get through this. But when he said 4 weeks, I was like, oh, I can manage 4 weeks. I'm sure I can manage 4 weeks. Well, 4 weeks turned into like 6 weeks, turns into 12 weeks. And it just continued because it was so painful. Like, I've never had to deal with something so painful. And I just, with talking with Coop and like my team of, you know, my orthopedic doctor, my therapist, is like, you have to stay patient. Like, that's the only thing. If you want to recover fast, you have to stay patient. This is not a fast healing injury.
Right.
And like, it happens to about 2% of the population where the stress fracture that I had. And so there's not a lot of research on it. And so they don't really know, you know, what is the recovery process, but, you know, basically non-weight bearing and biking, or as I did, a lot of lifting weights to just get, you know, I had so much time on my hands. I'm like,
right.
I have to fill this void.
This is, I mean, I'm hearing you say this and like it breaks my heart because I know how much running has meant to you, and it's been over the last few years, it's just been incredible to follow your journey and to follow this growth and to see you win and crush all these races. And I've always seen you as being incredibly resilient. Very few injuries, you know, and if something came along, it would only keep you out for a couple of weeks of that, and you're right back to training, and then next race you're in, you're crushing it, and you have this incredibly positive spirit. It's been incredible to follow. And then when to hear about this injury in the fall, and I'm now hearing all the details, and it's just that's awful. The question's been popping up in the chat room, and Kim, you probably have one pulled aside there, but just people are curious. You are a physical therapist. You deal with physio with your patients and stuff all the time. So as someone who recognizes these symptoms in others, were there any red flags? I mean, you're talking about the knees and the back and stuff like that. At any point, were you as the physical therapist going, Casey, something is wrong? Or was it you as the athlete going, you can push through? Like, how was that mindset, that battle?
Yeah, it was basically like a Jekyll and Hyde in my head. It was, you know, I'm such a focused person that like I want to do what I have already signed up. You know, I was signed up for that race. I was like, I'm not gonna quit. I knew I shouldn't. Like deep down inside, I knew that I was like, I need to take the time off. My knees are not normal. Like that was a huge red flag. But now looking back, you know, in retrospect, I see that. I'm like, who would you have told somebody to run with knees as swollen as yours, for one thing, and then waking up thinking that it's okay to take 4 a leave before running? That's
yeah. When I didn't want to say anything, but when you said that, I was like, Casey, come on, 4 a leave.
Oh,
like
man.
that is
Easy.
not what you should do. That is do not do, because I numbed the pain for that long, and what happened was that my back had gotten so tight that it was pulling, you know, counterintuitive of what my knees were, and so that stress was right on my pelvic bones. That, you know, that's gonna find the weak link, and right there it was, and it just so happened to be that day that it couldn't handle the rest of that run.
Wow.
But, you know, listen to people when they say don't take, you know, a leave or ibuprofen because of pain, like that kind of pain, to force yourself to go through a race. I should have just stopped at that moment, told myself, you know what, I can't run this race, but I'll be there and I'll support like my mom and my other friends that are out there. I can be a supporting, you know, volunteer instead.
Mm-hmm.
Like I should have done that. And I didn't, and now I paid the price. But I hope none of you have to pay that price, because trust me, like 12 to 16 weeks of not being able to run is not worth one race.
Yeah, we have Amelia Boone also in the chat room who underwent a serious injury, very similar. She was out for a very long time. We've had other guests on the show that have dealt with this, and the consensus is exactly that. You don't want it. You don't want to have to deal with so much downtime. It's so difficult. And we'll talk to Casey here about the lows that she had to encounter over that training period. But of course, we are live, and Kim has pulled aside a bunch of questions. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say we also have a doctor in the chat room as well, and he says, doctors and healers make the worst patients. And I think there's a lot of people nodding their heads in the chat room going, yep, that's true.
Yeah. I am also a doctor.
That's not true.
I know.
I would like to say one thing, that Amelia's blog post about her recovery was very, very great to read, because that's what I read. And I was like, okay, she had all these setbacks, and I'm going to learn from somebody that's been through it. And if you have an injury, I really recommend you to read this, because it was so incredible.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have been able to relate to it, and that's why I think it's important also, Casey, that you're being so open about this journey. I can imagine it's pretty tough for an elite athlete to come to grips with the fact that they are injured. As you just told us, it was very difficult for you to realize maybe popping for a leave isn't the solution. Maybe I'm injured, but as an elite athlete, it's hard to talk about it, I can imagine. So I think it's really helpful, because as someone who had an injury last year, I had a hard time even admitting it to myself, and I don't compete anywhere close to the top. And you just think in your head, I'll be fine. I can just push through it. Maybe it's just a little bit of pain here or there, and next thing you know, you're traveling down a dark hole of injury after injury after injury. Let's get to some of these live questions. Sorry, babe.
Yeah, John in the chat room asked, you've given yourself the time to heal, very difficult for elites. How did you find the patience or the courage to stop running?
I literally could not run. It hurt so bad. I couldn't walk. It took me a long time to be able to walk. So I was really basically forced to rest. And once I came to terms to that fact that I'm going to have to rest, I found other avenues to take place of running at this point, hanging out with more family and friends, going to the gym, lifting, doing those core exercises that I've been putting off for so long, and doing the little things that that I hadn't made time for and should have. And so that really helped.
You just mentioned going to the gym and lifting. There was some talk from Coach Coop about tickets to the gun show and your newfound guns that you've acquired. We
might have to see the guns, Casey. Putting you on the spot. I won't say I'm putting you on the spot. I'll say Coop is putting you on the spot.
They're getting weaker now that I haven't been going, but it was fun to be there and train different body, structures and everything. So that was a blast.
So let's start talking about, you identified the issue because it basically kept you from running. You knew at that point, I can't run, I'm injured, plus all the fractured, you're getting the diagnosis from the doctors and you're seeing that there are in fact bad things going on. What's going through your head? Are you thinking you're never going to run again? Or what's going through your head as far as how you're processing the information?
Yeah, it was almost like a grieving stage going through it at first. First, I was no, I'm not. I can't be injured. My body can't fail me. How can it fail me? It's been going so long. I've never been injured since I've started for this long. So I kind of went through that process, and then I was like, okay. Then I got sad, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to run for how long? Right. And initially, the doctor was at least 12 weeks. And what I've seen from others and reports is 12 to 16 weeks. And I'm thinking, I first set a goal, so it happened October 22nd. I was thinking, well, by the end of January, I should be running again. So I just have to bide my time. I'm it's winter. I don't like running in the winter as much anyway. So, just make it, committed. Well, that happened, and we got to the mid-January, and I still couldn't run. That's not good. So I was like, I can't even walk without pain still. I'm like, oh no. So then I kind of got crushed again. I was like, oh shoot, how much more time is this going to take? February rolls on and I'm like, oh, I'm still not being able to walk without this pain. Like, I don't think this pain's ever going to go away. I don't know if I should work through it. And, I'm just slowly healing. I don't know. And then I just like, you know what? You've went this long. You can go longer. It's fine. You just got to get through it, and you got to stay positive because there will be a light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to slowly get there and have patience. And Coop kept telling me, patience, 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 patience. And so I'm like, this is the most patience I'll ever have in my life because this is a very long time for me to be out of something I love, and it's my life. Like, I love running, and so I just found other avenues, continued to do that until I finally was able to go to therapy. And then I started running on an Alter G treadmill, which is anti-gravity.
Right.
And that first day, I remember running, like 17 minutes in, I started bawling. I remember exactly that time. And like, that was the most amazing moment to come back from, that many weeks.
I want to get to that moment. I want to get to training on the Alter G because I remember you posting about that day too. It was significant in your recovery, both physically and mentally, I'm sure. I'm curious so did you have to deal with, depression and things like that? A lot of the mental side of things, not having to run. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's been lots of questions in the chat room. Deb Hamberlin actually asked, I know that there's a certain level of depression that goes along with injuries like this. So sorry, Casey.
Sorry.
Deb asked, how did Casey deal with this?
Sorry, the dog saw a bird.
There's nothing wrong with that. So I really did not let myself get into that hole of depression. I can probably count on my hand how many days that I really had bad days because I let myself have one of those bad days and then I would rebound and I'd be like, all right, it's a new day. I'm going to be able to do something. So for me, it was like, okay, I'm on crutches. I'm going to go crutch a 5K, doing silly things like that to still be outside, still be active, still kind of get that little adrenaline pump. But, for me, the key was my attitude and staying positive the whole time and reaching out to my family and friends. And, Miguel, who's my best friend, and, he's the one that always paces me. He was integral, like helping me. Like, he would come over, walk my dogs because I honestly could not walk the dogs. So he would walk the dogs, I would crutch around, and just teamwork and finding somebody else to help with that, processing really was integral to keeping out of depression.
I saw this. Kim is still taking care of Gus. Gus is definitely freaking out. There's critters outside, and he knows it. But I saw this question pop up here in the chat room as well on how you and Coop work together to try to structure your return, because when it's something like this where you don't know if it's 12 or 16 weeks or 20 or more, how were you structuring the comeback? Was it a matter of dipping a little bit further into the distance or doing certain exercises that kind of got you down a certain path? I mean, how did you guys work together to come up with the solution?
It was definitely a team effort. So I had Christy Nielsen, my physical therapist, my coach Jason, and then the orthopedic doctor. All of us were collaborating with this, how to get me back. And so it first started off, 4 weeks of non-weight bearing. Then I was able to do the recumbent bike where I could sit down and I could do that for like 20 or 30 minutes at a time every other day, just trying to build up. And from the recumbent bike, I kind of went to the upright bike where I could sit and continue without having any weight bearing. And from then I started incorporating walking. They said, if you can start walking and having a brisk walk without pain, that's the next goal. So then I did that. And finally, like, I went that many, I think it was 12 or 13 weeks. Finally, I was able to do the Alter G treadmill, which is the anti-gravity. And I started at 65% of my body weight, which is basically running on air. So I started there, and it was basically every every other 2 days or so, I would get to go onto the Ultra G and start off like 30 minutes, then to 45 minutes to an hour. And I did that for at least 2 or 3 weeks. And
Wow.
finally, I was able to start putting my body weight up to almost 90% on the Ultra G treadmill. At that point, then I started to incorporate like 2 and 3 mile outside runs, and then involving both of those for a while until I finally was able to basically run 100% body weight outside once again. But it started very slow. It was like an hour I would be just destroyed. My body was not used to running and taking the impact again, so it took a long time to build back up.
How were you able to determine? It's so easy coming back from injury to look at the pain scale on for this one. I imagine it was centered around a specific region. So how were you able to determine this is recovery pain as opposed to re-injury pain? Was there like a threshold that you could not surpass, or did you have a scale internally, or how did that work for you?
It was very new to me because I've never had to deal with something like that with pain. Like you can't work through this pain. Like that's not the kind of pain to work through. So for me, starting off like on the Ultra G treadmill, it was scary because it would still be very tight and sore, and I would get these, this pain right in the groin area, and it would be constant. And I remember several of my runs were like that. But as long as it wasn't getting worse, it was okay. As long as I didn't get any sharp shooting pains, it was okay. And so I would do that. I would get off the treadmill, and most of the time I'd be very, very stiff and sore for quite a while. And so it was finally then that pain started to gradually get better and better and better. And then finally, like, I don't have that pain anymore. Like, I don't even feel it anymore. It's finally gone. So it took a good 5 months before it actually was pain free.
Wow. Coop in the chat room again. Jason Coop is your coach, and he's a frequent viewer of the show. He's saying that recovery versus re-injury pain is a good question because it's so hard and it's never a linear progression. So yeah, I can imagine that's probably one of the most difficult parts of that recovery is identifying what's pain that you're working through and what's pain that you should not even get close to. Again, we are live, and we are taking questions from the live chat room.
And from Gus.
And from Gus, because Gus wants to be a part of the show so desperately. But Kim has already pulled a couple of those questions aside. Go for it.
Yeah, and stop me if you asked any of these while I was dog wrangling. Josh asks, Casey, what did you end up enjoying about the downtime, and any lessons you carried over since training again?
That's a good question. We never talk about the positives of the downtime. Yeah, any positives that you can remember?
I definitely have found that like I like to now not compare myself to anybody. I've found that this is all starting from scratch, and so with that recovery process, like I'm not comparing anymore. I'm not comparing to my old self anymore. It's all new. So it's kind of like a rebounding of like I'm starting all over again. So it's fun in the rebuilding. The other thing was I really enjoyed going out and having fun with friends more than I used to. Like I now go out on the evenings. I'm like, oh, it's okay. Like I can go out and still go to bed by 10 o'clock or whatever. So just being more relaxed in life and enjoying the times that like I had basically shut away because of that and not made time for. Now that I had made time for it, now with the injury, it's easier to make time for it now.
That's cool. It's easy to forget that elites, they live, I don't want to say sheltered lives, but they're so busy with training and executing a plan that a lot of times the first thing to go is social life and family and stuff like that, because there's so many of the hours of the day are so focused on training. So that's cool to hear that you were even able to like take some time for Casey and go have fun and rage. Let's be honest, Kaci Lickteig, we know you raged real hard now.
So bad.
So hard. So now I really want to talk about the comeback, because this is something I'm fascinated by with you, because you literally had to start at zero mileage, zero time on feet, working on the Ultra G and working your way up. So when you started the comeback, did you have goals in mind? Was it, I want to be able to run blank distance someday, or what was the mindset moving you through this?
Well, since Ultra World Tour gave me a ticket to Western States, that was in the big grand scheme of things. But
Nice.
building for that was just going week by week and seeing how my body was adjusting to my recovery. And it's been the slow buildup of, hour, 6 hours to 8 hours to 10 to 12. I'm finally up to like 10 and 12 hours of running again. And it was literally day by day. I would talk to Coop and say, I'm really sore. I don't think, I should run. And I did have one other setback during this recovery when I first started running at 100% body weight. And I ended up getting severely anemic. So my body had not
Really?
been used to running. And that hemolysis, breaking down your blood, when you're running and things like that, I ended up getting severely anemic. And I went in and I found out that I had went from like a 14. This is a little nerdy, but I was from like 14 to 8.2, and normal range for women is like 12 to 14, more on the higher range if you can. So at a hemoglobin of 8, I was like, I had no oxygen to any of my muscles, and my runs felt like death. I felt horrible. I could barely run 8 miles. I was stopping like every 2 miles because my heart rate would feel like it's just skyrocketing, and I couldn't breathe. I was huffing and puffing up a bunny hill. And so that kind of actually, I don't know if it helped me to slowly get back into running, because it made me like run at least a couple minutes slower per mile. So it was like, it was allowing my body to adjust to the 100% body weight, whether or not I liked it or not. It was going to be a slow process. And so that helped me build up even slower, which I think is a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it basically is your body is literally keeping you in check and making sure that it's moving at the right pace for you. At what point were you really optimistic? Was there a point that you got to that you could see the light at the end of the tunnel?
There was. It was the one weekend where I had like 2 solid runs back to back, and it was like, all right, I feel none of the injury pain. I feel, I'm still slow because of, coming back, but I feel like I'm back to myself. I'm getting my stride back again, because my stride was horrible. I was on that arc trainer for so long that my stride got really short and choppy. So when I started running again, it was like, oh, I'm going up and down instead of forward. So it really was a whole learning process. And once that happened, it was like, all right, I feel like now I'm able to sign up for my first race. And I was like, I'm going to do one that's a little low key, and I love the Trail Nerds events. And so my mom was going to do the 40 miler. I thought, let's just make this a fun event, and let's all go together and just have fun and, celebrate everything.
Had you run trails much at that point?
I had ran 0 times on trails.
So, yeah, I mean, you're going to run a long ways. The old Casey, maybe not so long, but for the new Casey, that's a long distance on trails. For the new Casey, that's also probably a little terrifying. How did you approach? Yeah, how did you approach it? Was it just like 0 pressure, or kind of what was the goal?
I had so much, like, my nerves were just crazy. I was scared because I hadn't ran on trails since October 22nd of last year. I haven't ran the distance since that day. And so my longest run was on concrete this year for 21 miles. And that is not trails. That is not, rocks and roots and stuff that you have to maneuver around. And so I hadn't even like got to wear my trail shoes yet. So this was all a first timer stuff, like running trails, running on new shoes, let's try this. And I was so anxious and nervous. I just, I did my prayers and just, my mom was going to be there. Miguel was there to pace her and crew me. And then I just, I'm going to do what I can. And I'm just going to, go out there, do what I love, and be smart about it. That was the key. Just be smart and, do what I love to do. And that's how it happened. So it was such a great day.
I can only imagine, based off the stories you're telling us about how much time you had to just be non-weight bearing, take time off completely from the sport that you love, that's given you so much life over the years. I can't fathom what it felt like to come back to that and to do something so incredible. Again, we have live questions here from our live chat room. Kim's pulled a bunch aside here. Go for it.
And I also have to say congrats to your mom, who sounds like she killed the 40-mile race as well.
And the comment in the chat room was just how nice it must be to just drop into a 40-miler, no big deal. And I'm like, Casey's mom's pretty legit. She's a pretty legit ultra runner. She's been doing it for a while.
It was her longest run in over 2 years.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That's awesome. Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, Scout has a question and comment here. So coming back from recovering from injury, Scout asks, have you and Coop come at training with a new process or perspective, or is it pretty similar as past training modalities?
It's definitely more tentative right now. We're just building up and I'm sure we're going to be tweaking things, changing things around to make sure that, things stay healthy. And I'm definitely going to be more diligent on when he says, rest and rest, recover, and like taking my rest days now and not going out and saying, oh, just because I can run, I can. The rest is very, very important, and I respect that now.
Awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah, a question from Kim Wrinkle from early on in the show. Kim asked, Casey, most important lessons learned over the months of injury. So that's kind of been a common question popping up here.
Definitely, life is not just about running. So don't always think that, someday you may not be able to run, and make sure that you have other avenues. Cause I did not at that point, and it's very difficult if you don't have other avenues to I'm going to go do something else. Like I'm going to go, lift weights and do something like that, or spend time with family, or, you got to find other avenues just because of that. And just having a healthy balance. So I've definitely changed my lifestyle to where I'm more balanced and, not having the heavy load of just running. It's going to be running and then friends, family, all those other things that, come together, working together.
So I want to talk about the Freestate Marathon. So this is your first race back. It sounds like you were doing it primarily for a couple of reasons. One, to test to see if you could do it. You could, obviously. I imagine also a bit of a mental test too. How was it? Like, let's talk a bit about the race. Did you encounter the lows that come with trail running and ultra running? Like, did you have some of those same moments that you've had during UTMB or Western States, or was it all joy? Was it all low? How was it for you? How did it play out?
It was, so starting off, just getting out there, I kind of just zoned in onto the trail, and it was all new to me. Like I have to focus completely on all these rocks. And so I'm like, all right, don't trip on a rock. Don't trip on a rock. That's the last thing you want to do is fall. Injure yourself somewhere else. And
right.
So I was just, I started running. Probably the first mile, there was one person with me, and then they passed me, and then I was by myself because it was a half marathoners and marathoners together. The rest of the race, I was completely alone. So I'm like 25 miles by myself. So I have a lot of thinking to do at this point. My goal, number one, was to, smile every mile, enjoy it, embrace what you're doing, looking besides the rocks, looking around and just enjoying nature and being out where you love. And so it was just like the first loop. I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, okay, I'm going to be making this first loop. Okay, 13 miles is the first loop. I know I can do 13 miles. Trails are, they're difficult, but they're not like super difficult, like not
right.
huge climbs or anything. So you can do this. I noticed that like my quads were just like totally fatigued the whole like first loop. I'm like, oh my gosh, they haven't gotten used this much like on these trails. So got that first loop in, and like I was super excited, and I took my raincoat off and everything, thinking, oh, you spared the rain. Well, it started pouring right after I took my raincoat off, of course. So it started pouring, and it ended up getting this tacky mud, and it's the tacky mud that builds up on your shoe to make it feel like it's 10-pound weights. And so I'm running, and I'm like, oh man, this is really, really going to stress that injury site. So I'm kind of panicked, because I'm like, this is like lead weights on my feet. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what if this like does something to where it's going to cause that injury again? So I'm thinking, gotta stay positive. Nothing hurts. Just keep running. And I literally was like, every quarter to half mile, I was having to stop and like find a rock or a tree stump to like clear my shoes off, because they were so heavy. And I'm like, normally I'd probably be like cussing in my head, thinking, this sucks. Why am I doing like this stupid mud? I hate this, But I was like so in the moment of like, I'm running a race, and I am running a race. Like, I haven't done this in 6 months. And I just stayed positive. I stayed smart. Like, remember, you have to keep up with your nutrition, your hydration, just be positive, keep smiling. And it's attitude. Attitude is everything. So keeping positive attitude, keeping it happy, and that mindset, that kept me all the way to the finish. And I have never been so overjoyed to finish. Like, it was just, it's still surreal to me. I'm like, I finally ran my first race 6 months.
Oop, sorry, you said ran my very first race 6 months, and then it froze. What did you say?
6 months finally paid off of patience.
That's incredible. We're so happy for you, Casey. It's one of those things where our viewers, fellow runners, ourselves included, we hit these walls of injury. It's inevitable. It's gonna happen to all of us at some point. The severity of the injury, of course, will waver, but we all will encounter it at some point. And I imagine the last thing you expected was to get an injury that would take you out for 6 months and literally take you from top of the game, crushing 100-milers, 100-mile pluses, international stage, to nothing, not being able to run at all, and to work your way back up into this last weekend, crush the marathon, I imagine was bliss. What was the feeling like crossing that finish line? And also knowing that your mom was out there crushing it too. Like, how was that for you?
Oh my gosh, tears of joy, excitement, like all the happiness just overjoyed me. I was grinning ear to ear. I still am, because I'm so happy. And then seeing my mom crush her race and watching her finish so strong, like, that's my inspiration. Like, she's so tough too. And seeing, Ben, the race director, who's been battling cancer, it was like a full circle of like, all of us are going to have great years, and we're going to make our lives, our lives are important and better just because, perseverance.
I love it. It's amazing. I'm really, really stoked for you, Casey. And I guess the next question, it's inevitable, but what's next? Is this something, are you looking to gradually increase the distance, get back to ultras, or are you totally content kind of holding it out where it is now, making sure everything's okay, and moving forward at a later date?
Oh man, my passion lies in ultras. There's no doubt about that. I'm already signed up for Western States, UTMB. I'm gonna go back, and I can't wait to have that day again. And just, I'm gonna be grateful for the experience. Grateful for healthiness, and that's all that matters to me, is just being happy and healthy, and learning from the past and not making those mistakes again.
That's awesome.
I was gonna say, like, as we're such big fans of yours, Casey, and just hearing you say that and knowing your passion for the sport and your positivity for the sport before the injury and now coming back, it just makes me so happy.
Yeah, you certainly inspire a lot of people, Casey,
Yeah.
not just with your athleticism, but just with your positivity.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Oh, sorry. We have Chris Thornley in the chat room, and Chris says, Casey, you're such an inspirational champion. Your inner light shines brightly. And that's
Totally
very,
true.
very true.
And a big shout out to Chris Thornley, Squirrels Nut Butter. We have some pretty awesome news from him for the Patreon supporters later. I just want to make sure that we shout him out because he's doing some pretty cool things.
My Squirrels Nut Butter. I got no chafing this whole weekend with the rain. Amazing.
See, that's good. That's testament because you're also, as your first trail race back, that's testament.
Yeah.
There you go. Yes. Best plug you could possibly get right there, Chris.
These biceps could have chafed pretty easy.
Careful, those guns. I'm so excited to follow along with this, Casey, and follow your journey. I think you're going to you're going to be back on the world stage here this summer. It's going to be incredible to follow. Are you setting expectations at all? Or I imagine you have a completely new appreciation for just the ability to run. Are you setting any expectations on your summer, or are you just out to enjoy it?
I'm just going to live in the moment. That's
cool.
That's the goal for now.
I love it. People wanted me to redo the quickie question quiz with Casey. I think basically people wanted to know I think they want to know what gear, right? So they want to know what shoes.
People are very interested in knowing what your favorite ultras are for trail and road.
She's run one trail race, guys. We can give her we can give her some time to figure out which shoes work for her.
I'm very excited here because I ran Lake Sonoma in ultras this year.
Yeah, and the Timps.
Yeah.
What shoes did you run the marathon in?
I did the Lone Peaks, the 3.5s. Loved them. They were great for that.
Nice. And people also wanted to know, what Netflix show did you binge on during your downtime? Did you get to enjoy any of Netflix binging?
I liked Portlandia.
Hey, right. That's not a bad choice. That's a pretty good binge fest. Any last minute questions for Casey, and then we'll move into the post show with her and get all the more specific questions from Patreon crew.
Go ahead, Casey.
Can I just tell everybody how amazing you guys are for the support and everything? You know, just reading your tweets, your messages, everybody coming out and like saying, you know, we're here behind you. I felt that. I really did. And I felt it the whole time. And that's what really got me through a lot of this, you know, negativity and the depression that could have happened, was knowing that I have all these people that are behind me no matter what. And I just want to tell you all, thank you very much, because it means the world to me.
Well, as, again, fans of Casey, it was hard to follow, because it breaks our heart to see someone who is so full of joy and positivity about the sport have to go through such a rough time. But it's really awesome to now be here months down the road and seeing you come back to the sport and seeing you continue to crush it. It's cool. And I think it's only going to help us because, like I mentioned, it's inevitable that people get injured in this sport. It can be a subtle injury. It can be a big injury. Our health could fall by the wayside, and we have to deal with it. And it's always important for us to see people like you who are at the top of the game and have to restart.
Yeah, and come out the other side with like such a positive attitude. And I think everybody's just going to be like fanning so much harder.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I promised him I would ask this question. Andy Jones-Wilkins, a frequent viewer and guest of the show.
Yes.
I will say that Andy Jones-Wilkins is the one guest we've had on the show that every time we have him on, he can't figure out how to get on. So shout out to Andy Jones-Wilkins. He says he cannot tune into the show tonight because he has a school function, but he wanted to ask a question of you. What place on the Western States course are you looking forward to seeing the most in June, and why?
I am dreaming of Cal Street. Coming across Cal Street, looking out over the American River, I love that view. I think Craig Thornley posted an Instagram picture of it this weekend, and if you have a chance to look at it, it had beautiful flowers, the American River's there. I love it. I mean, it really, really rang my heart, and I had a little tear because I just am sentimental about that trail. I
mean, as someone who's gone through injury and just got my first ultra in over a year, it's an emotional thing. The sport's an emotional sport, and we're so drawn to specific events and moments and memories. I can only imagine what this course means for you this year, and I'm not going to speak for you, but I can imagine every footstep that you take on that course is going to feel incredible. Except for the few that you might have like stomach issues or something. I don't know. But knowing your
I'm running.
Exactly. Kaci Lickteig, it is so awesome to have you back on the show. Can you remind people who are watching live or listening to the podcast or the archive where they can find you on social media so they can ask any additional questions or seek advice, that sort of thing? People who might go through the same thing. Where can they find you?
Sure, I'm on Facebook, just Kaci Lichte. I have both an athlete page and a personal page. Twitter is at runner_KC, KNC. And Instagram is at ultrarunnerKC.
Nice. So thank you, everyone, for watching live. Now comes the fun part where we get to tell you how to win an entry into the Quicksilver 100K, plus earn yourself $500 of a travel stipend, which is brought to you by the Shea Darce Memorial Fund. Darcy, who was a part of the Quicksilver Running Club, she helped turn the let me just go to the watch out here. She helped turn that finish line at the Quicksilver 100K into a feast. One of my fondest memories of that race was that finish line. They do like lobster and steak, and they go to town.
Yeah, they do it up.
It is one of the best finish line feasts I think
Casey wants to win the entry.
Yeah, Casey's like, wait, what did you say? Lobster? Lobster and steak? Oh yeah, okay, not lobster, maybe steak.
I'm also allergic.
Yeah, Kim is as well, so it's totally fine. So here's how you can enter to win a race entry to this sold out race. It is also a Western States qualifier, so this is a rare opportunity to get into a race for free and get a $500 travel stipend courtesy of the Shea Darce Memorial Fund. Here's what you need to do. In the description of this live show, there is a link to the Quicksilver Run Club Facebook group. So all you do is you got to go to the Facebook group, give it a like. They're a really incredible group of people. That running club, I think, has been around for 34 years. It's been around for a long time. They're good people there in Los Gatos and Northern California area. So give that Facebook group a like. And then within that Facebook group, they just posted today a link to the show, basically saying we're giving away a race entry. So in the comments of that post, what we want you to do over the next couple of days, basically until Friday at noon, you have until Friday this week at noon. So if you're watching the show a couple weeks from now, the contest is...
It's too late.
It is too late. And in fact, I'll remove the link in the description of this video after the fact. But by Friday at noon, post a comment on that post with the photograph. And the photograph should be you showing the Quicksilver Run Club how much you want that race entry. That's pretty much how I'm going to outline it. It can be whatever. Make sure it's legal and make sure it's appropriate. But take a photo of yourself really showing the Quicksilver Run Club how much you want to race Quicksilver 100K.
That's a great contest.
It should be pretty fun. I think the photos are going to be pretty...
I didn't say I'll just post me eating lobster, even though I'm allergic to lobster. But I'm like, I'm doing this for the race. Just like tears and like puffy.
You guys got to one-up it. So a winner will be chosen at random. You're right. A winner will be chosen at random come Friday. So you'll find out pretty quickly after that, and they'll let me know, and I'll be able to announce it on social media and stuff like that. But it's a very easy contest, and it's an incredible prize. In addition to that prize, as I mentioned, we will be giving away a race entry to Pacific Coast Trail Runs. It is, what is it? Oh my God, I forgot the name of the event. It's the
Redwoods.
It is the Redwoods. It is the Skyline. Oh my God. Skyline to Sea race that they do this fall, which is a beautiful 50K marathon and half marathon that runs through the Redwoods. It's a net downhill, which is awesome. And Kim and I, after the Quicksilver 100K, when I ran it, we hiked part of this trail, and we were told that trail, which was incredible, we didn't know it at the time, but that trail was a part of this event, and it is an incredible event. So if you would like to win a race entry to that race and an additional $500 travel stipend, join us on Patreon, because all the rules and the entire contest will take place on the Ginger Runner Patreon site. So everyone who's been supporting this channel for months or for a month or for years will get a chance to enter that contest. And that'll be really fun.
And that one is only for Patreon
that is a
supporters.
Patreon only supporter. Yeah. So to do that, you can join us at patreon.com/thegingerrunner. For as little as $1 a month, you get to support the channel, get to support what we do here, but you also get to enter cool contests like this. And on Patreon this week, we're going to be sharing a coupon to get your own Squirrel's Nut Butter for a very discounted price. Chris Thornley has hooked us up with a coupon code just for Patreon supporters, which is pretty rad. Pretty rad of Chris to do that. And speaking of Patreon, we are going to continue to talk with Kaci Lickteig in the post show. Every Monday after our main show, we do a post show for about 10, 15, sometimes 20, 30, 45 minutes with our guests, where we get to ask all the questions that didn't get asked during the main show. You get more one-on-one time with our guest. And that is for Patreon supporters at the $1 level and above as well. So that's also another perk.
And there's lots of people in the chat room saying that the link for the post show is taking them somewhere else.
It's been updated.
Should be updated if you go into the actual Patreon post. So if you're clicking through on the email, it might send you to a different video, but go into the Patreon post and click the link.
So again, thank you everyone for tuning in live tonight to episode number 207 of Ginger Runner Live. A big thank you to Kaci Lickteig, our guest tonight. Congratulations, Kaci, on your return to trail running. Can't wait to see what happens next. Yeah. I'm thinking some big things this summer, perhaps. She's got the guns.
Yeah.
She's got the biceps. That's pretty much it. Am I forgetting anything?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Go enter the contest. Get yourself a free entry to the Quicksilver 100K. It is a beast of a race. I would enter it, but I've done it.
You haven't recovered from the last time a few years ago?
I still get nightmares of dog meat. I do want to run it again desperately. So thanks, everyone. We'll see you guys next Monday, or we'll see you in the post show in just a couple of seconds. Get out there, train hard. Thanks, Kaci.
Thanks, Kaci.
Get out there, train hard, race harder, and part of the hardest. We'll see you guys next week. Bye. Ginger.